DA leader John Steenhuisen has launched his party's election manifesto at the Union Buildings earlier today. This as the party gears up for the general election set to take place this year. Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngobo is at the Union Buildings in Tshwane and joins us live. Ziyanda, good to speak to you this afternoon. I understand you are speaking to the DA leader this afternoon.
Absolutely. He's hoping to become the president of South Africa if all goes well for him in the 2024 elections. Big promises from the Democratic Alliance, Hugo. 2 million jobs over the next 5 years. A new concept of prosumers, which will be dealing with ending our load shedding crisis, which basically is to encourage IPPs, and if those who are producing a lot of electricity, then they give that back to the grid. So let's bring in John Steenhuisen. Congratulations on your manifesto launch. 7 key pillars have been outlined by you today to end what you say, the rescue plan rather, for South Africa.
Correct. And I think that what we've done is focus on the 7 key things that we believe are essential to fix South Africa and to get it back on track. Look, there's plenty more things that need to be done.
Yeah.
But our view is that if you don't get these 7 things right within the next 5 years, or fixing all the other things it becomes even more difficult to do. So we haven't put a 300-page manifesto out. We haven't gone into the details about the millions of other things we'd like to do. These key 7 pledges are 7 pledges that people can hold us to over the next 5 years should we be able to get into national government. And I think they're realistic, but they're also backed up from experience about what we're doing where we already are in government.
Yes,
and I think that gives the credibility, because I think any party can stand on a stage and read out a laundry list of promises and undertakings. You have to show how you can deliver them and how you can fund them to give them credibility.
I don't think anybody doubts, the Democratic Alliance's presence in the Western Cape, but others could talk about your presence in other areas such as Nelson Mandela Bay and eThekwini. So, your manifesto, it's 55 pages. It's largely underpinned by being the leader or the anchor party, as you put it, of the multi-party charter. But you could argue that the DA in areas such as NMB and eThekwini, you've not shown that you would make a great anchor party.
Well, I think we have absolutely in eThekwini shown that without a shadow of a doubt.
But you failed in your council attempt to dissolve council this week.
We wanted to get that council dissolved. It's odd, though, that the party whose leader stood up on their stage recently and said eThekwini is the most corrupt municipality in the country, still supported the mayor staying on there. We want that council dissolved so that the voters can be given an opportunity to turn it around. In Nelson Mandela Bay, the DA made huge progress in turning the city around. In just a year of DA government there under the former mayor, Athol Trollip, we were able to turn it from the worst metro to do business with to the second best in the country behind Cape Town.
But Athol's not part of the DA anymore.
Yeah, well, but he was implementing DA policies. Mayor Retief Oudendal, who then came in afterwards, was able to make huge strides in being able to restore services, to be able to get the police, metro police rolled out, to be able to bring in equipment like the shot spotter system in gang-ridden areas of the northern areas. That has all fallen by the wayside now since he's been removed. So it shows when we get into government and are able to implement these policies, things do get better. One looks at what Chris Papas is doing in Umgeni municipality in KwaZulu-Natal, an outright DA-run municipality, making huge strides in overcoming the challenges of service delivery. We believe that the DA is going to be integral to a post-election coalition precisely because we have the size, we have the people, we have the policies, but we've also got a track record of governing where we do and where we've been able to implement these policies that have improved the lives for South Africans.
There is a nervousness, which I'm sure you appreciate, around coalition governments. If you use the example of the City of Johannesburg, and there's a reason why then I wanted to stay on the referral to you as the DA being an anchor party, because in the City of Johannesburg, the huge fight there from your former leader in Johannesburg, Paul Palate, was that you and Helen Zille were interfering in the ability for, at a local level, for them to be able to negotiate what would best work for residents in Johannesburg, as opposed to having at the national level, these kind of agreements that ultimately may not work for a particular dynamic in that municipality?
Well, let me just say that's not true. I don't make decisions on my own. All decisions around coalitions are made by the collective leadership of the party, the federal executive, which is representative of all of the provinces and all of the elected office bearers. That's the body that looks at doing things that are in the party's better interest. The problem with Johannesburg is it is over-fragmented. You've got 18 parties represented in Johannesburg. 11 of those 18 parties have less than 1% of the vote. It makes it impossible to form a stable coalition there. And that is why you've seen this revolving door. And that's why our solution is to do what you do in any democracy, where the result ends up with one that cannot be stable, and it's to go back to the residents and give them the power to choose a government that they believe can take the city forward. The reality is there's no pathway to forming a stable coalition in Johannesburg. But I think the mistake that many people make is by looking at coalitions through the lens of Johannesburg only, and then being very willing to throw the coalition baby out with the Johannesburg bathwater. Okay. The reality is we're involved in around 25 coalitions in different configurations with different parties all over the country. These coalitions bring good, clean, accountable, stable government to places as diverse as Richards Bay in KwaZulu-Natal to Saldanha Bay in the Western Cape. They don't make the news, they don't get the features, precisely because they're getting on with the job of delivering good, clean, accountable government. So people mustn't write coalitions off by looking through the Gauteng lens. Very big fragmentation, and I think it's a warning to voters in this election that the shotgun spread betting approach will lead precisely to the type of chaos that you're seeing there, which is why we make the argument about giving the DA a strong mandate, make us a strong anchor there, so that we can bring that stability that would be required in the longer term. We didn't get enough votes.
In Tshwane, though, John. The Treasury is actually now taken back 2.3 billion. You clearly don't know how to use that money. So let's leave the Western Cape aside, as I've said. Let's talk about Tshwane. Yeah. And it's a strange thing, some would say, you're having your rally here at the seat of government, at the union buildings, and yet in the very municipality that is led by the DA, there's a lot that's going wrong, and you are in charge.
It's an 8-party coalition that's in charge. And
led by the DA as an anchor party.
We don't have enough votes to, we believe, form a significantly strong, stable coalition here. But we're trying our best to do it. Had we been given a stronger hand, I think things would have been completely different. But let's talk about Tshwane, which happens to be the 3rd largest municipality in the world. Very, very big scale. Secondly, what National Treasury has done has given an indication. They haven't taken it away yet. They've indicated to the municipality that's what they intend to do. What the news is not saying is that they're doing the same in Johannesburg, and they're now doing the same in Ekurhuleni. And I think the problem here, if you look at Tshwane's spend, it's about normal for this time of the year on those grants at around 40%. And I've spoken to the mayor there. What we suspect is happening is that the finance minister has to deliver a budget next week on Tuesday. Yeah. He has a 6% budget deficit that he's got to make good before he even starts to fund the promises the president's now made in Sona. He needs to get that money from somewhere. And what we see this at, and certainly what our mayoralty and the mayoral committee there see this as, is a desperate attempt from Treasury now to claw back money that has been allocated to the local sphere to try and plug the gap at National Treasury. And I think that's what you're seeing playing out here, which is why they're putting the exact same pressure on Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. The finance minister has a major problem. If he comes to Parliament next week with a budget that doesn't plug that 6% deficit, he's going to get laughed out of town, and he's going to be laughed off the international markets. And that's what you're seeing here, a clawback, desperate clawback to try and get money back into National Treasury's control.
I want to talk about what the polls are saying about you. We touched on it a bit yesterday when we had a brief conversation. But isn't it a strange irony that you, for the first time unheard of, declaring another opposition as an enemy, and now the polls are saying that actually they could take over your position as an official opposition and you might actually be on the decline?
Well, they said the same thing in the last election, if you may recall. They said the EFF was going to overtake the DA to become the official opposition. We ended up with double the votes that they received. I think that the polling, the company that does that that poll has some problems with its methodology. It has been consistently proven wrong, and which is why it's been downgraded by Nate Silver's international company that rates polling agencies to a B- because of their poor track record in predicting these things. I'm very comfortable to say to you that after this election, not only will we potentially be the largest party if the decline in the ANC continues and MK continues to eat the ANC's votes, but without a shadow of a doubt, we will be the second largest party in the country, precisely because we have the reach in every province, we have the people, the policies, and the scale to be able to turn out voters in a way that nobody has ever done before. And I'm comfortable with these things happening. In every election, pollsters come to say, COPE's going to be the official opposition.
Yeah.
Then it was going to be, the UDM. Then it was Good that was going to eat the DA's lunch. And then it was the EFF in the last two elections. None of that comes to pass. The blue machine gets out an election and does what it does best, which is turning out voters in a bigger way than any other party can.
Not so much in 2019, though, John, because for the first time since the dawn of democracy, the blue machine, to use your words, actually declined. And many would argue that it's because of what the DA has chosen to do in terms of the exodus of what many would say were credible leaders in the party, including getting rid of Mmusi Maimane. Do you think that the faces that you present to be leaders of the party, who are by and large white, mostly males, is actually going to help you arrest that decline from 2019?
Well, firstly, let me just say, we may have lost a few percent in 2019, but we're still the second largest party in the country.
Yes, but you may still be on a decline trajectory.
No, we won't, because the 2021 elections, the local government elections, showed a major recovery of voting support. And currently now, in by-elections, we're 7% up on where we were even before 2019. I would say nobody got rid of Mr. Maimane. Mr. Maimane instituted a review process. He handpicked the people to do the review, and the review made several findings, one of which was a failure of leadership. He chose to take the path that he did. But I think anybody looking today at the stage of the DA and seeing the faces of the leadership represented there can be very comfortable. This is a party for all South Africans. And here's the thing that makes the DA unique is the fact that our vote share comes from roughly thirds. A third black vote, a third white vote, a third coloured vote, and of course some Indian vote in between there.
So you think there's enough representation?
We're the only party that draws from a variety of South African voter pools. The ANC's voter pool and their leadership are monochromatic. The EFF's voter pool and their leadership are monochromatic. The Freedom Front's voter pool and leadership are monochromatic. In sharp juxtaposition is the DA, where you have black, white, Indian, coloured, Christian, Hindu, Muslims, all working together and represented in the face of the party. And you saw that on vivid display today on the stage at the manifesto. You saw it at our Congress last year. The DA is by far the most diverse political party in the country, and that is a source of pride for me, because I think through that diversity comes the huge strength that takes our party forward.
So if you were to decline further from 2019, would you institute a review process against yourself?
Well, there's always a review after the election, but I'm very comfortable the DA is not going to decline. I'm very comfortable the DA is going to have its best result ever in this election, and certainly that's what the credible polling is showing. And I've no doubt that the alternative offer that we've set out today is going to find significant traction with more and more voters. So, it's not dealing with hypothetical situations. I'm leading a party that's on the up. By-election results show it. The polling is showing it. And we're able to grow across all communities. We're going to have a great election because we're offering South Africans the best chance they have to rescue the country going forward.
Let's go back to your stronghold, which has been the Western Cape. You have declined a bit in that region. Are you concerned about the impact of the DA stance in relation to the Israel-Hamas conflict and it actually continuing that decline in the Western Cape, which is actually your stronghold?
No, I don't, because I think the DA's position on the Middle East is eminently defensible, it's rational, it's reasonable, and it follows the line of most international democracies. We believe fundamentally in a two-state solution with an independent, sovereign, unoccupied Palestine living in peace alongside a secure Israel. And we believe that is the best way to achieve lasting peace in that region.
Do you believe Israel is committing genocide?
Well, that's not for me to determine. The only place that determines genocide is the International Court of Justice. And they are seized with that matter. And as I've said after their initial finding, that as a party that respects the rule of law and the Constitution, we will respect whatever judgment the court comes on. I don't think it's up to individuals to determine genocide. It is up to the ICJ. It is them that are the arbiters of the UN resolution, and we will respect whatever the outcome of that process is.
During your speech today, you addressed the Constitutional Court ruling, which basically affirmed the DA's request to have them hand over their Al-Qaeda deployment minutes. A strange situation where one political party is handing over, the minutes of their organization to another. If on Monday at 5 o'clock the ANC fails to submit those papers, where to from there? Or they submit those minutes, but they're not satisfactory in terms of the detail and getting an understanding of the decision-making processes of the governing party.
Well, we've already been approached by the ANC to say they need more time. We've said you've had 3 years. We're not prepared to grant you any more time. And we're also hearing that they've been leaking selectively some of those minutes to a variety of media houses. So if they're willing to give it to the media houses, there's no reason they can't be handing them over to us. Should they not comply, we will go back to the court and we will have those ANC office bearers that are responsible held in contempt of court, and they will then face the same fate that Mr. Zuma faced when he was contemptuous of the Constitutional Court's judgment, and we will make sure that they are held accountable. Those minutes, it's not a strange thing for them to be provided to another party, because the judges in the case have been very clear that these may have been decisions made in a political party, but they have had public consequences and consequences for the state. So that action has translated into appointments made by the state. And therefore it is in the public interest for all of us to know which judges have been deployed, which ambassadors, which DGs, and which people Mr. Ramaphosa, who's always been very publicly opposed to what happened under the 9 wasted years of Mr. Zuma, to see what his role was in deploying these people into Eskom, state-owned entities and government departments, while he was the chairman of the Al-Qaeda Deployment Committee under Mr. Zuma. And I think it's going to paint a very different picture of Mr. Ramaphosa's role from that which he attempts to portray publicly, that this is some man who's now actively trying to clean up the state, when he himself was at the heart of the state capture project.
Last one from me. What makes you believe you'd make a good president? What traits do you have as the leader of the DA, the anchor party of the multi-party charter, to actually rescue South Africa?
Well, first of all, I'm honest, I'm a straight shooter, and I don't abuse public office or public money for personal benefit. I believe that being truthful with voters and those who elect you is the cornerstone. And I also believe that I will get up every single morning to fight for the people of South Africa. The hardest part of my job is not dealing with biased presiding officers or dealing with the EFF and the ANC in Parliament. The hardest part of my job is travelling around South Africa and having to sit with people who've not eaten a decent meal or been able to feed their family in months. The hardest part is seeing graduates holding their certificates crying because they haven't been able to find work for 2 to 3 years. That is what gets me out of bed every morning. And I want to get up every morning and fight for those people. And I think that's what makes me different to others. I'm not there to empower politicians. I'm there to give power in this democracy back to the people who need a government that's going to be on their side every day, not working against them.
All right. DA leader John Steenhuisen, planning to become president, I would say. They believe that they'll become the biggest party in the country, releasing their manifesto